Good morning and welcome back to another Dan and Sarah Makers garden shed build video. Today we are going to be working on the roof, so we decided to pull out the chop saw, and since we don't have a cordless chop saw, we are bringing out the corded chop saw with a generator and a stand. So we've got that all in the back of the UTV here. We'll park it as far away as we can with an extension cord so we don't have to listen to the generator all day. But
we're still going to have to listen to the generator.
Yeah, with the 1212 compound miters on the ends of some of our valley rafters, it's just going to be a lot easier and faster and more productive to have the chop saw. So much faster and easier. So one of us can cut down on the ground, the other person can call out measurements and just cut and pass and install. I think that's typically your most efficient, fastest way of doing it. So we're going to start on our valley rafters. We're going to start on some of the Kalman rafters on the front porch and the back wall, and it should be looking pretty well framed up by the end of the day. It'll probably be a little bit of a short day because we have some stuff this afternoon we got to get to, but it's again feeling like a chilly fall morning. It's cloudy, there's a bit of a breeze, so
might as well enjoy it while we have it.
Yeah, before it's 15 degrees and snow on the ground everywhere. Yeah. So, but we'll enjoy that too. So let's get going. All right, quick update.
The festival has been demoted.
The $1,000+ chop saw that's new, what, 15 years, 12, it's 10 new. Years old? 10 years old-ish. It's gone out. For some reason, the switch has given us problems in the past one time, and now it won't turn on this time. Power's good. So we went and we got the almost 20-year-old $200 rigid chop saw from way back when, and it still runs and it does fine with a good blade. So we're going to run the rigid saw. This happens to be the second Festool tool that we've had that is not working. So I've got because of a switch issue. We've got an old CT33 dust collector that doesn't turn on either. But fortunately there is a tool sales place that sells Festool and has a repair department that says they can work on them somewhat close, hour or something away.
Someday we'll give you an update on that.
And maybe we'll take those two in a big batch and have them fix everything. Fingers crossed. All right, back to work.
What we're doing.
One of the most important things when you're framing a roof, stick framing, which is basically cutting each piece individually and installing it. When you're stick framing a roof and you have hips and valleys or diagonals and ridges, it's real easy to start installing your joists in such a way that it pushes your valley and makes a curve, or a hip makes a curve. You start pushing it off to the side. So one of the things that I'm doing, just because we're set up to cut a specific way right now for our hip rafters, or our valley rafters, I'm sorry, opposite of a hip. I'm putting a string line on top of the rafter itself in the center so I can reference it and make sure that as I'm installing these rafters on one side all at once, I'm not starting to push it over incrementally and make it worse and worse and worse. So I put a string line just above the top center of my valley rafter. That way I can always eyeball it and make sure that I'm not pushing it off to the side as I install these rafters. This is a relatively easy roof because it's a 12-12 pitch roof and we're dealing with a lot of 45-degree angles, but not all the time are you doing as steep a roof as this. So you're doing a 312, a 612, 712, whatever. You can do technical math to figure out where your rafters hit, especially hips and valleys, because they're an odd angle. They're running a longer dimension because they're in the corner. But what I like to do is I lay out my rafters on my ridge, simple 16-inch on center, 24-inch on center, but to transfer them down to my hip and start getting good measurements without doing a lot of funky math, is I'm just taking my T-square, and at the very beginning, I'm making sure that it's touching all the way across, and it's just hanging down off the top of my valley rafter. I look at the side of the square here, and then I just eyeball down and I make a mark down here on the side of my valley rafter. I then just use the torpedo level to plumb it up, and then I use my speed square to figure out what the angle is. And after a couple of those, do the next one, I can start figuring out what the run is in between each rafter here, and that makes my layout a lot easier as I start getting further away from the ridge than my T-square is long. I'll go back and check my measurement of my rafters as I install them to make sure that I'm staying at my 16 or 24-inch on centers, whatever I want, and I'm not getting closer and going uphill with the ends of them, or going downhill and getting further at the ends and starting to spread out or shrink. So I'm always back checking and making sure they're consistent. That line up? Yeah, pretty good. Pretty close. On the other side, it was 28 inches in between, and that's right there. So for this measurement here, I'm measuring from the top to the top. So I'm ½ inch down, and our sheeting will just bump the side of this ridge. So they're 2x4s.
So are you flushing out the bottoms then?
Yes.
Okay.
So the bottoms will flush out and the plywood will kind of bump the ridge. So I'm measuring ½ inch down at the top to this point here.
Okay.
And that's how I'm getting my
So the
measurements.
long side of the mitered edge, 45 miter,
Yep.
to the short edge of the compound miter.
Yep. Then measuring like that. And so I'm looking at like 19 3/16. For these valley rafters, we have two ends of each rafter, and they're different. The top of the rafter has just a single miter cut, or a 45-degree angle. Miter is just a fancy word for an angle cut. So you just have a single miter cut at the top, but as we come down and hit our valley rafters also plumb on one face, just like the ridges plumb on one face, but we're no longer parallel. We're now 45 degrees in this case off of our ridge rafter. So we have to not only do that plumb miter cut like at the ridge, but we've got to angle it to meet the face of this valley rafter that's 45 degrees off of this one. So that's where we get into what we call a compound miter, or two miters together in different directions. So we've got a single miter at the top of 45 degrees, and in this case a compound miter of 45 degrees one way and 45 degrees the other way. So we'll take a look at that on the saw.
Because the miter cuts can be a little bit confusing, especially if you're doing the compound miter cuts. We made a mock-up down here for me to reference, and as we change directions for each one of the valley rafters, we're going to have to make a different one of these so I don't cut them wrong. So here's the 45-degree angle. This is just a simple miter cut for the ridge, and here on this other end is the compound miter. So you can see it's angled both on the 45 but also 45 here as well. So this is the side that sits in the valley rafter or attaches to the valley rafter. So I am measuring from the long end of the regular 45-degree miter to the short end of the compound miter. I make a mark and then I make a 45 so I can match it up with the saw blade. So now I have the chop saw at 45 degrees down here, and the blade angled at 45 degrees here as well.
second, let me get close enough. 64 1/2. You can probably hear we just turned the generator off, so we are done using the chop saw. Our two valleys are all framed up, so we've got our little valley rafters with all the fun compound miters cut. They're done. So now it's just going to be a matter of cutting 45-degree angles on our main rafters that run from the ridge to the walls and just start hanging those. So we'll probably do this inside, and then we'll move out to the front porch. The ladder and the valley are in the way there.
Do you want to go to that last one there or no?
We're not going to do this one right now because we're going to put one over here. And I'll probably put backing on the flat here.
Okay. So let's go to the other side then.
Yep.
See if I can move it.
Probably just shoving them up to me. Let's do this one first. Well, that does it for another day out here. We got our valley rafters and our common rafters in. You really get to see the shape of the roof now as we intended it, so this is really cool for us. We've got a few little details here and there to take care of, but that'll probably be in our next video, and we'll start on our fascia and get all that stuff taken care of. So, follow us on Instagram at DanaseraMakers. Be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, thumbs up, all those good things for our YouTube videos. We really appreciate it, and it does help us out a lot. And we hope seeing this kind of stuff happening inspires you to get out there and do things. Until next time, this is Dan. Have a good one. Bye.